Hello, and welcome to this little side project of mine. My name is Jenny, and I'm a creative expat living in Paris. Amongst many things, I'm a writer, a yoga teacher, and a creativity coach. And I created the creativity flow a while ago with the intention to combine and share two of my favorite topics, which are mindfulness and creativity. And starting a podcast project of sorts had been on the top of my list, but there were just a lot of other things on that list too that took precedence in the end. And funnily enough, though, I actually recorded an episode a year ago, pretty much exactly a year ago, even. And that has never seen the light of day. And to tell the truth, I think it just wasn't the right time back then because certain things just weren't in place yet. But if there's one thing that I've learned when it comes to a creative project, it's that you have to trust the process and that you have to trust the timing, which is one of the things I want to talk about today, especially in relation to the latest project that I've published, which is a poetry video titled City of Lights. Personally, I'm a huge sucker for a good creative process deep dive. It's one of my favorite topics. I love talking about it with any creative whenever I get a chance. I just want to hear everything about the inspiration, the catalyst. I want to hear about what was going wrong, what was going right, what was the situation, all the little Easter eggs and inside jokes that are always hidden, all the little details that you wouldn't think to look at if you didn't know about them. I just love that. And I thought, why not share that about my latest project? But before we get started, I thought, why not bring a little bit of mindfulness to the table? And so I'd love to invite you to take 3 deep breaths with me. Depending on where you're at while you're doing this, while you're listening to this, maybe you want to even take a little break, close your eyes, and try to sit or stand up tall. So make your spine as long as possible. And we'll take 1 deep breath together in through your nose. Hold at the very top. And now exhale, side out through your mouth. One more time. Inhale through your nose, maybe even deeper than before. Hold at the very top. And exhale, slowly side out. One last time. Inhale, fill up your lungs. Hold for a moment. And now exhale, side out, and release with that everything that you currently don't need. If you've had your eyes closed, gently blink them open again. I'm always amazed how taking a few conscious breaths every here and there can make all the difference. So I hope that felt good to you. Anyway, let's get back to the creative process. So the project I'm referring to, as I mentioned, is a poetry video titled City of Lights that I've done in collaboration with one of my favorite people and incredibly talented filmmaker, Marley. She's someone I miss very dearly because sadly she's left Paris, but I always love working with her. And the video will be linked in case you want to see it either now or after you finish listening to this. What I love about this project is how much it evolved and grew and kind of became its own thing. Because what you see now is really not what was planned at all in the beginning, yet it just works perfectly. And I want to say that is purely because we allowed ourselves to go with the flow instead of holding on to a specific idea or expectation that we had, and we didn't restrict ourselves anywhere. The initial starting point for all of this is back in April. The Jenny at that time wasn't doing great. I had just experienced two breakups at the same time, and that was a romantic breakup and a platonic friendship breakup. And I confirmed that dealing with one breakup sucks, dealing with two is worse, especially those who just happen to be your favorite people at that given moment. But I also confirm that the friendship breakup was worse than the romantic breakup. And I think this is something that isn't spoken about enough. How a friendship breakup can honestly affect you so much more because it just cuts you a lot deeper sometimes. But anyway, things happened. And one of the many consequences for me was that I didn't feel happy anymore in Paris. Paris is a city I moved to over 3 years ago now. And it always used to be my happy place for many different reasons. But that just wasn't the case anymore in that moment. And everything just felt so different all of a sudden. Because at the end of the day, it really is the people that make a place, not the place itself. And I remember being in and out of Paris over the following months, just for trips and traveling, and because I would have to just get out of the city. And I would actually deal with a lot of anxiety whenever I was on my way back, which is something I hadn't experienced in a long while. And naturally, I was on the brink of dropping everything and moving away. But I guess deep down, I just wasn't happy with that being the reason why I would leave this place. So at one point, I decided that I would focus on trying to fall back in love with the city again. And there's a saying that I live by and love that goes, where attention goes, energy flows. And I just knew intuitively that I needed to pour all of that energy into something, into a vessel, into a project of sorts. So the idea of creating all of this was born, or rather, it resurfaced again with a different purpose and angle. So, in other words, the premise of this project was I've fallen out of love with Paris and I'm trying to fall back in love with it again. And there I was with a little mission. And I wanted to set myself up for success. And when it comes to a creative project, depending on what your chosen discipline is, the majority of the time it will be a solitary activity, which makes it by nature just a little harder when it comes to accountability. However, one thing that I've learned from working as a model is that if you can turn one part of what you're doing into a collaboration of sorts, then you are more likely to get it done. And also, you can then use that to build momentum and to get going with the rest of your project. So, a project catalyst, if you will. So, to get this off the ground, I asked my friend Marley if she would be down to collab with me on a video. Her and I, we had done 4 projects together prior to this, and it's truly beautiful because we just built so much trust and such a strong connection by doing that. And anyway, so I wrote a text that was going to be the voiceover of this video, which is not the final poem that we're using that you can see in the video now. But I pitched my idea, I sent her the text, she was down, we sat down to discuss about ideas, make a plan, put together a little mood board with some inspo imagery because I was thinking of just a lot of imagery with light, with like light shining through, sun flares, all of that. And at the same time, though, and I want to say more importantly, my intention with all of this was actually for her and I to just have fun. Because I also knew that this was most likely going to be the last project that we were going to work on together for a while since she was going to be moving. And that just felt like an appropriate way of honoring the time we spent together and all that we created before. So Marley and I were shooting a total of 3 times. Unfortunately, the first time that we met, it was raining and really gray, and we decided to go with the flow though. So because of the weather conditions, I decided at the very last minute that I was gonna throw all my hair into a bun. I grabbed my umbrella, I threw on my vintage trench coat, and that was just the outfit of the day, which I'm really happy with now in hindsight. And we went to Coulivert for most of it, which is a beautiful little place, especially if you want to go on a walk in Paris. Highly recommend. And yeah, we just had fun with it and we just went with the flow. There wasn't too much planned. We told ourselves actually that that would just be a day of doing a test shoot, essentially, since, the conditions weren't as great anyway. But my favorite bit from that day was definitely when we were jaywalking. We were running across the street close to Bastille, and that actually ended up producing the most gorgeous film stills. If you're watching this as a video, I'm gonna insert it here. Anyway, that was happening end of May. So just in between travels, essentially. And day 2 then of shooting didn't happen until mid-June. So a few weeks later. And this time we were joined by the lovely Erin, who I also miss very dearly. And he assisted us with some bouncing. And that day was a lot of nature and water and bridges and stairs. And so we ended up going to Canal de l'Ourcq, La Villette, and also Buchamont, which is my favorite park in Paris. And again, we were just using all of that as our little playground. Unfortunately, it was still a very cloudy day, so we didn't really get any sunny shots as we had planned on initially, but that was fine. We just went with the flow again, and also we didn't do any serious location scouting, just looked around and kind of felt whatever would work. But there were 2 locations in particular that I loved that we really stumbled upon. The first one is this random little balcony in La Villette, and it's just all gray, but then you've got these leaves going down on the side, and then that day was really windy, so you could see the leaves just move in the wind. Very beautiful. And then secondly, there was a location that's also in La Villette, and that's a mirror installation, which kind of looks a bit weird, but we kind of walked around it. And it's just in the middle of where they've got all these trees, and that just looked really cool. And I also just especially love Marley's camera work in one of the shots. I'm gonna try and insert it. But she's just following me around and kind of like weaving through the trees as I walk around, and it's just beautiful. I love that part. And then again, some traveling happening. And then our last day of shooting happened a month later, so in mid July. And contrary to the other 2 times, that day I planned out to a T. So I told Marley to meet me at Canal Saint-Martin, which is a place I love in Paris and somewhere I used to go to a lot because I used to live close by there. And from there, we took the metro to Arrêt-Métier, which is one of my favorite stations here. And it was on Marley's list to film something there. So I was happy to be doing that for this project. I was also very happy that I ended up wearing all black, which I didn't even think about, but being in that station and wearing all black just gave this beautiful contrast. So it was just black against a bronzy backdrop. So really gorgeous. And the shots from that are just wonderful. And then from there, we took the metro to Vesti. And I had an idea in mind that didn't work out. But basically, I remembered that when you take the line one to Vesti, you're always kind of underground. And then this last bit, you're overground. So in my head, I thought, oh, great, like there will be this contrast of light happening. That will be a beautiful shot. No, didn't work out. But we did still use shots from that. And actually, I took a book with me, which is a poetry book. I got it here with me. Hold on. So it's this lovely book here, which is by Leonard Cohen. It's called The Book of Longing. Mine has a little stain on here. I bought it when I was in Madrid back in April, beginning of April. And I was just wandering around the city and stumbled across this English bookstore, and I went in and I just felt magically drawn to this book. So I ended up buying it, and it was with me during my whole trip in Spain. Hence why we've got a stain on there, but it kind of works. I don't know. This is a unique hobby now. But the main reason why I even had that on my list of props I wanted to bring is because in the original text, I'm quoting Leonard Cohen. And that quote is actually not from this book, it's from a song that he wrote called Anthem. And you probably know this quote because I think this is the most famous quote there is by him. But it goes, "There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." And it just really fit the theme because the original title was actually City of Lights, and we kept that because it works, because Paris is the city of lights. Anyway, from Bastille, we made our way to Colivert again to reshoot a couple of things. And even there, we shot a couple of things, and you'll see in the final video there's this beautiful shot that Marley did where it's basically like zooming out, kind of going from like my shoulder going backwards. And there's this pigeon like going past in the back. And what a timing, like paid actor. That was beautiful. But anyway, from there, we made our way to the Marais and we went to Musée Carnavalet, which is one of my favorite museums in Paris. And we went there for two reasons. Firstly, this was actually the first museum that I went to when I first moved to Paris. And secondly, they have a gorgeous Art Nouveau room. And I'm a huge Art Nouveau fan. And I'm happy we got to go there. And that was the 3 times that we met to film. And after that, we wrapped. So then from there, we were faced with a number of delays. And in hindsight, this feels really fateful though. You'll see why. But first, the ball was back in my court because I had to record an audio file for Marley to start the editing process. But the issue was that I was out of town and I hadn't brought any of my gear with me, so we had to wait until I was back in Paris. But then by the time I was back in Paris and had recorded that original text, Marley was out of town and she took on a last minute project. So she didn't have time to work on our project. And then, in general, it was summertime, so summer always slows things down. But then in September, she stayed with me for a week and we were talking about a couple of things. And she had sent me photos from those days of filming together. And I was looking through those photos after she had left. And that sparked something in me where I wanted to write a new text. And I think it's also because that original text at that point just felt too outdated. Because we started talking about all of this back in April, and it was September at this point. So I was sorting through my ideas, and I suddenly remembered that I had written a poem about Paris and about moving to Paris. And that was from maybe a month prior. It's actually a poem that took me 3 years to write. But if you're interested in that, I'm going to make a separate episode telling you all about the process of that and the inspiration and everything. So I'll link that down below if it's out, whenever that will be out. But anyway, so I found that poem in my notes and I realized how all the footage that we took would work pretty perfectly for that. And again, we were actually just really lucky that Marley was in the midst of moving, so she didn't have the time to work on it. Because, otherwise she probably would have used the recording of the original text. And I consulted Marley, I sent her my poem, and she agreed that it will work really well with that. So I got a new recording done, and this is what we worked with. So really, it's just because of the time passing and life throwing things at us and all these delays that this project turned out the way it did. And the thing is, if we had started with this poem from the get go, which obviously wasn't even a possibility because it didn't exist yet, I hadn't written it yet, the result would probably be so different. And that's not to say better or worse, just different. And creative projects by nature aren't competitive. They might be as soon as you bring capitalism into the equation, but inherently they're not. Because there's no competition, as it's all about self expression, and only you can create and bring forth whatever you're supposed to bring forth. So, whatever life throws at you, and in whatever way you are recycling your experiences, your emotions, and your impressions. And that makes creative projects a mirror and a snapshot of who you are in a certain moment. And I also just love to believe that there really is a time when projects are still hatching and when things are brewing and whenever they're ripe. And there is a right time for that, and there isn't. And there's nothing you can do about it. Anyway, so after I had sent Marley the poem, she worked her magic. There were a total of 3 revisions, but there weren't any huge changes. We just worked on the previous version that we had to build on that. And to me, it almost felt like the final version was already existent. And we just had to figure out how to get there. Maybe in a similar way as a sculptor could look at a block of marble and already see the sculpture that is hidden within it. And his job is just to free that and bring it to life. So the first draft Marley sent to me in mid-October, and I remember watching it for the first time, and for some reason the audio wasn't playing, which I was actually really glad about. And for me, when it comes to my modeling work in photography, but especially for videography, I always have to look at it a number of times until I can actually see it. Because the first time I will be too focused on just myself. And obviously, the video, if you've seen it, it's me. It's just me. So there's a lot to get past. It kind of feels like, peeling some layers back. And with the voice as well, it's always a little weird to hear own voice sometimes. So I was glad that the audio wasn't playing. And then, when I actually listened to it with the audio, I'd already peeled back some layers so I could look at it and see it for what it was. So that was really good. But I loved the draft version. I was so happy with it. And I was just especially so proud of Marley because this was our fifth project now that we've been working together. And she is just getting better and better every time. It's actually crazy. But I remember there is one little surprise Easter egg in there that she added in reference to a previous project that we worked on. And it doesn't fail to make me smile every time I see it, still now. But yes, I was very happy with the first draft. And we agreed that we'd add some captions to it just to make it easier. And also that we wouldn't do any music, but instead just some sound design. So then a couple of days later, she sent me a second version and I gave some feedback. I brought in a couple of ideas, especially for the sound design, but also the pacing of the poem. The thing with Marley, and also why she's such a great collaborator and I love working with her, is because it's very easy for us to communicate. Because when you are doing a creative project with someone, the two main things that you need are trust and respect. And that applies to trust and respect in someone else's skills, their vision, and also the ability to express oneself freely and voice your opinion without things being taken too personally. And that's something that's very easy to do with her, which I love. Then a few weeks later, I got sent another version and I had a couple more pointers about the captions, the color grading. And I remember I asked her if at the end of the poem, when it goes to feel the flame that still burns in my heart, if she could try adding a match striking sound to make it match the poem. And it worked really well. And she then also added this whole fiery sound kind of blending in with the heartbeat sound that she had added initially already. And that just worked out perfectly and was just gorgeous. And again, that is something that can only happen if you're collaborating with someone that you can truly communicate with without the fear of hurting someone's feelings or upsetting someone. But yeah, then after that, she worked on those last pointers and then that was it. With a couple of projects, sometimes I feel like it's hard to know when the end is. There's always more that you can change and tweak, but not in this case, at least not for me. Maybe Marley has something different to say, but for me, that was the end and it just felt like the end. And overall, I'm so happy with the final product, but I'm even happier about the whole journey that I just told you about because as a creative, it's the journey that makes something meaningful, not necessarily the end product. For me, the end product is more a reminder of everything that has happened, everything that's led to the moment. And creative projects, are also a way of making sense of things, be that past experiences or thoughts or emotions. And at the end of the day, working on this project with my friend really coincided with my actual healing journey. And it was a way of honoring who I was at one given moment while really paving the way for who I am today. And thinking back to the initial premise and the reasoning of why I even wanted to work on this in the first place, it's crazy to me because this was only supposed to be the first spark to get me started on my journey of getting back on track with things. But honestly, it was so empowering and healing on its own that I kind of just fulfilled my little mission then and there already. But more than anything, when I look at the end product, I'm just really grateful. I'm grateful to have all these beautiful memories now of working on this with a very, very dear friend. And I'm grateful for all the growth and changes that have happened throughout those months. And finally, I'm really grateful to be living in a city like Paris. So, the main takeaway here is really to always trust the process. And that includes trusting the timing, trusting the way that things unfold, trusting yourself, and that you can do anything that needs to be done. The other takeaway here is being able to collaborate with someone is an immense gift, and it can make all the difference. And that being said, if you're a creative based in Paris and you'd like to collab with me to work on something fun, hit me up. Let's talk. I'm always down. But voila, that's all I got for you today. I hope you enjoyed. Please let me know your thoughts. Feel free to shoot me a DM, leave a comment somewhere. I'd love to hear what you're thinking. There'll be another episode out soon about the poem itself. And until then, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day, wherever you are. Thanks for tuning in and stay creative. Bye.